From a once clumsy boy and a failure to all realms of shinobi endeavor to the ultimate god of shinobi, the most powerful man to ever live. So just how strong did Naruto Uzumaki actually get through Shippuden? Well, let's find out. Shooting for 20k, let's go. Opening up with Naruto's base form, we immediately see a new confidence in his gaze as a result of his countless hours of training, which Databook 3 hails along with, quote, Naruto has returned to Konoha after a 2-year absence. He has mastered a new jutsu through intense training with Jiraiya. He's mastered new ways to deal with genjutsu and honed his shuriken throwing, strengthening his fundamental shinobi skills. No longer is Naruto that young, reckless shinobi who went into every battle without caution, blessed with an innate unpredictability and perseverance, and with a strength tempered through hard training, he charges ahead on his shinobi path like a hurricane, which implicitly halts the baseless notions of Naruto not really having learned anything with Jiraiya, when in fact he has, so much that now in the bell test, Kakashi's birthday column commentates that, quote, Kakashi is fully prepared to undertake missions with his newly equal comrades, which is also repeated in Naruto's column as well, which seems to sound awkward at first, but if you couple it with the remark above about the two, being evenly matched, this would more so imply that Naruto and Sakura as a tag team are now in the same tax bracket as Kakashi, which is just to say that they are closer to a partner to Kakashi as opposed to a student. And this is a very basic theme addressed at the start of Shippuden, surpassing Kakashi. Now, of course, this doesn't happen here, seeing as, well, he has sign weaving abilities that are verbatim stated to be faster than what Naruto can actually follow, with Kakashi still having Sharingan precog, speed enhanced techniques like the Raikiri and Kamui to truly beat Naruto if push ever came to shove. And calling back to Databook 3's remarks, we also see that in the opening of the Sasori vs Deidara encounter, he had a new summoning scroll with a large shuriken, and while it is blocked, these are S-rank Akatsuki members, with each of the which being stated to be capable of taking on a Bijuu and even a 1000-minute once. Furthermore, Kakashi, still guiding Naruto as his sensei, remarks to Naruto that he's never fought an opponent like this, and while this could be talking about his caliber, it's certainly talking about how, as Kakashi notes, Deidara is a long-range fighter and Naruto's a close-range fighter. Deidara is someone who flew into Tsunegakure and murdered the Kazekage alone, and his threat isn't to be confused, as Kakashi further notes. And as Naruto continues to pursue Deidara with his rage and the plot thickens, now Kakashi uses a new jutsu that Naruto considers to be literally insane as it warps space, ultimately ripping Deidara's arm off. He, being unpredictable as ever, then has two clones ready to Rasengan Deidara when he's focused on the second Kamui. And while Deidara is physically faster than Naruto, he dodges, allowing for Naruto to then cut the clay bird head off, which we see the two clones reunite with the original, which actually may be only that the original just threw the clones up there to counter the distance. And this is actually really impressive, seeing as this was something that took Heavy Sasuke's full mastery of the Sharingan, according to the back of Databook 3, to actually accomplish. Naruto then sucker punches the absolute brains out of my boy Deidara and jumps him pretty hard, having 4 clones hold him down while he goes on top of, the top rope to smash his face in, which is then revealed to be a clay clone. But this does still speak to the ruthless rage that's buried deeper than Naruto, which is by far the largest theme for the form to come. Naruto has continued on, and as Kakashi is in the hospital, Team 7 takes control under the leadership of Yamato to follow up Sasori's planned meeting with Orochimaru, wherein upon arriving, we see that Yamato is exposed as not really being Sasori, and after getting out of the Hiriko, Orochimaru relies on his much faster snakes to then completely restrain him in the air, until it's revealed it was just a wood-style substitution. And as Kabuto and Orochimaru provoke Naruto about Sasuke, he taps into that previously aforementioned rage, causing Naruto's chakra to swirl where the hatred felt seemingly palpable. The words about Sasuke's newly chosen path singe Naruto's mind until it suddenly explodes off the ground with a revealed Three Tails cloak that rips Orochimaru's entire face off, sending him flying across a forest. You see, Naruto's power is now far beyond whatever it was and even will be for a period of time. His rage is so much that it literally multiplies his power, with the Three Tails being the farthest he can go while maintaining any consciousness whatsoever. Quote, his comrades are stunned by that power, but it is a force that may eventually turn Naruto himself into a threat to the entire shinobi world, as stated in the 1 Decade 100 Ninja Anime Guidebook, possibly implying that Three Tails Naruto is a threat beyond anyone in the known world, or could just have the sheer power to blow up a part of the planet at large, but I do doubt that. You see, Guidebook 3 now tells us another thing that happened when Naruto was with Jiraiya, in that, quote, through his training with Jiraiya, Naruto learns how to control Nine-Tails' strength, but it simply has too much power to be completely dominated. And as Orochimaru regains his foothold, he constantly torments Naruto, causing the air to pressurize like 1,000 tiny bees, violently sending streams of raging chakra into the air, where it's the power that rips paint off the bridge, tears the guardrails, and even causes literal pressurized craters that one-shot Kabuto, who even the top Anbu member Yamato can't play around with. And with one final remark about Sasuke, Naruto then rips his arm off. Orochimaru has caused what both the 10th Minute Chronicle Guidebook and Jiraiya deemed a mini fox demon, who was the culprit in bringing Jiraiya face to face with death itself, being the closest he's ever been, besides when he was perhaps peeping into Tsunade's bath, calling back to Jiraiya's remarks about, it's noted that this dreaded Four-Tails state is likely multiple times beyond the Three-Tails state, as it is so powerful that it takes Naruto's consciousness away, and actually will kill him because of how much power is literally being exerted, acting almost as a double-edged sword or blade, hence to why it was literally ripping the skin off Naruto's face. So, just how strong is this Four-Tails Naruto? Well, if we take just Jiraiya's remarks of it multiplying his power, then there's actually a pretty strong case to suggest that Naruto is far beyond the same Three-Tails state that one-shot Kabuto with his aura alone, so hard that he was still recovering against a tree for most of the fight, with this same Kabuto being hailed as a fighter on par with Kakashi in that same 10th anniversary guidebook for the anime. Although, it does seem to be pretty in line with the manga, with the 10th Minute Chronicle guide also stating that Kabuto was a rival to Kakashi. However, Four-Tails Naruto doesn't stop here, not even remotely, as while he fights Orochimaru, you'll notice that he is vastly physically superior to him, forcing Orochimaru to be capable of keeping up through his snakes, the first of which would be sent out in the Mandala of Endless Snakes, which is thousands of poisonous snakes that Naruto swipes away so hard that from the edge of this massive crater, its force is still blasting both Yamato and Sai, where they can't get any closer. And the anime takes this further by showing a literal sky-high explosion that eviscerates the snakes altogether, with the former of the witch stating that he's never once seen power like this. And now this is actually, again, highly consistent with the previous Kakashi Kabuto stuff, but Naruto is currently fighting a Sannin, who are stated in Fanbook 2 to be rivals to the Gokage in power, meaning that each Sannin can beat any Kage in a fight due to just simple numeric arguments, with Orochimaru being called the most evil and powerful of all village enemies, which would include others like both Sasori and the previously praised Deidara, where Orochimaru's taijutsu was stated in the second anime profile guide to be practically equal to Hiruzen's, which the first fanbook also agrees with in saying that they were equally matched. This Hiruzen being someone who is stated 3 times to stand above the entire shinobi world, including the world's Kage, and while yes, Orochimaru is nerfed here, Naruto had previously completely brought Jiraiya, who stayed to be on par with a normal Orochimaru, to the brink of death, with Databook 3 stating that Four-Tails has, quote, transcended many shinobi limits. With an ultra high density chakra cannon, he can now turn almost anything in his line of sight into dust and ash. And the 10th Minute Chronicle guidebook saying, quote, losing himself and going berserk, even Naruto ends up hurting his own comrades. Orochimaru unleashes bizarre jutsu. Their battle has already gone beyond the realm of humans. All of Naruto's strikes are full of Nine-Tails chakra, which acts as a deadly poison that drops even the same Sakura who fought Sasori, whose poison was superior to a man who fought all 3 Sannin at the same time. His arms are also unique in that they literally burn or vaporize Orochimaru's snakes, and these arms can also be plunged into the ground so that Naruto can shoot them up at any spot, kind of like how Kakuzu does, catching the opponent off guard. And he's still a physical monster, as when even Orochimaru punches him in the face, Naruto, for the only time we've ever seen in the series besides basically Itachi with his mythical spirit weapons, instantly ends Orochimaru. Naruto quite literally ripped him in half, and had this not been Orochimaru, you could see how badly this would have been. But as a callback to the Biji Bomb, this is also one of the few times where Orochimaru seemed genuinely fearful of an attack. I mean, he's literally regenerated an entire arm and all of his organs, but this chakra bomb? Yeah, no. Even off-guard attacks don't work on Naruto from even the Kusanagi blade, which was equal to the same Monkey King Enma, who is revered as possibly the strongest animal summon of his time. The chapter 294 synopsis statement does in fact note that Orochimaru was in fact stepping back in fear of this attack, and he could scare Konoha's strongest Jonin to the point where he activates Raikiri before his Sharingan. Furthermore, the chapter 292 synopsis statement also states that the Four Tails power frightens even Jiraiya. So, the case for this Four Tails Naruto actually standing far beyond any Jonin and most Kage, really being a Sannin level threat, is super consistent. And to touch some more supplementary arguments for Naruto regarding like the Three Tails, we do see that chapter 364 shows full curse mark Sasuke as a parallel form to Naruto's Three Tails cloak. And while I do think that the Four Tails is clearly above heavy Sasuke, I equally think it's fair to say that this is just artwork with no genuine correlation to power. Although, to play devil's advocate, artwork like this in both pre and post chapter art is necessarily canon, seeing as fanbook 1 states that Naruto's favorite hobby is watering flowers, which shows a picture that's only shown in a post chapter artwork design. Just food for thought about how strong Three Tails and hence Four Tails Naruto actually is. Another would be like you could probably infer how Naruto would do against certain Akatsuki members, like Itachi in his battle with Yagura, through their performances against V2 Jinchurikis, who Naruto should be above. Although asserting Naruto above several Akatsuki members is already pretty concrete without this. Naruto is now beginning to fulfill the second role entrusted to him by his parents, the first of which is stated to be that of a Jinchuriki from his mother and the savior of the world from his father, according to Naruto's birthday column, where after having seen the full reasonable capacity of what the Jinchuriki aspect could bring, Naruto is going to begin narratively stacking up to Minato in this arc, with the third data book stating that Naruto is now the only shinobi who could surpass the fourth Hokage. But why does it say this? Well, now, after realizing the true depth between himself and Sasuke, and quote, understanding their frustration, Kakashi begins training Naruto for the first time in years, using a method he devised just for the young Jinchuriki, as stated by the birthday column, and is now willing to actually take on Kakashi's training method, that being, quote, the Shadow Clone training method, which is ideal for Naruto because he possesses an enormous amount of chakra. He mastered change in chakra nature, which normally requires years of training and just 2 days, according to Data Book 3, which also states that Naruto is challenging himself to perfect a new jutsu that even the fourth Hokage could not master. Now, this is a big theme, as I mentioned. Previously, when Naruto was a child, he had gained an ability the fourth Hokage once used. Now it's time to create an ability the fourth couldn't. Naruto, as we said, took in over 9,000 hours of pure training, likely also increasing his base stats too, and possibly his ability to actually combat stronger opponents, and that's because this is now something that is genuinely combat applicable, at least empirically, that being that Naruto could spawn 200 Rasengan clones to barrage his opponent, which is actually really impressive all things considered. This intense control of massive amounts of chakra has caused Naruto to crumble though a few times, in that Nine Tails chakra re-emerges, and you could actually imply that the Naruto clones don't believe they could stop the Three Tails clone, but more importantly, Yamato actually can, whereas previously with the Four Tails, he couldn't even get into the crater to hope to stop him, once again supporting a notion of a massive difference and potentially a multiplicative difference between 3 and 4. As we cut away, witnessing the terror of the immortal duo against Team 10 and Kakashi, where now Naruto believes that he and Sasuke can be equals after actually landing and kind of perfecting the Rasenshuriken, also alluding to just how the Rasenshuriken actually matured Naruto probably beyond just the jutsu in and of itself. And as Team 7 are being pushed onto their last leg, and Kakashi's down to one knee, and two of Kakuzu's hearts are aimed towards the crushing blow, in comes Naruto. Though disheveled, he is a factor that likely saves Team 10. Now mind you, Kakuzu and Hidan are stated to transcend the human knowledge about how things ought to work. They defy lifespans, physics, and basic nature. The two are essentially being set up as narrative precursors for another man being introduced at the beginning of the arc. Pain. Naruto, according to the Kizuna Earthscroll guidebook, is now viewing Kakuzu as a trial he must overcome if he ever wants to reach the friend who lies far beyond his grasp. Something Yamato also seemed to imply after Naruto stated he and Sasuke could be equals in the completion of his Rasenshuriken, this Sasuke before his training though, that is, stating that Sasuke still has a nature advantage. So while this does mean he could beat the Chidori, the fire style is perhaps a different conversation, allowing for Naruto to now face this trial head on with a more grounded perspective. And even though he misses the first one due to its dissipation, he tells Kakashi that he doesn't want help. This trial is one that must be fought alone, because as Kakashi said, Naruto is the only shinobi who can surpass the fourth Hokage. And with that, Naruto, while also thinking about his dear friend, uses a shadow clone feint and ultimately hits and one-shots Gyeongu Kakuzu, destroying 2 of his hearts in a single attack. Something that even Obito would warn Pain, the strongest man in the Akatsuki, as a means of describing just how dangerous Naruto has become. Naruto has now officially mastered what Databook 3 calls shape-shifting and nature transformation to the highest degree, of the which is in a technique that the fourth Hokage couldn't master. However, as the Akatsuki's ambitions continues to open the curtain of the theater of revolution, Jiraiya valiantly loses his life in battle against the Akatsuki's strongest man, Pain, using a technique that Minato too had once learned all those years ago, Sage Mode. After his dear sensei Jiraiya had fallen at the hands of the Akatsuki, Naruto's realization of his place in the world begins to shift and truly begins to take on the notion of the savior, as intended from his father. When arriving in Konoha, witnessing the devastation of Konoha, the entire nation crumbled, hundreds, maybe even thousands dead, including Kakashi, yet Naruto arrives and stares Pain in the face with a look the Kizuna Earthscroll says is one where Konoha's #1 prankster is no more, and has now obtained a form that even the fourth Hokage once had. But let's dial it back a bit. Naruto, after training with Paul, read Jiraiya's book, The Tale of a Gutsy Shinobi, wherein the main character pushes back that there will never be peace in the shinobi world, saying he'll break the curse if there is such a thing as peace. He'll find it. He will take on Jiraiya's will and bring peace to a world defined by hatred. However, another man's intent to fulfill his dear sensei's wish about peace, Jiraiya's wish about peace, another savior of the world, another child of prophecy, and now, as the Kizuna guide implies, both Naruto and Nagato are fighting for the ultimate decision of how Jiraiya's will be made real. Naruto has a Sage Mode that's stated to initially be one that might surpass Jiraiya, seeing as he has no frog features, although the eye rings are also a sign of a successful sage, and Jiraiya did have those, but just not the same ones as either Naruto or Minato, except the latter does state that Naruto's Sage Mode is the same as Jiraiya's Sage Mode, furthering how, despite popular belief, there's no real statement implying that Jiraiya is much weaker than Naruto in Sage Mode, except for the Viz localized back of Volume 45, which, despite it being a mistranslation, isn't even fully devout in saying that Naruto is more powerful than his fallen sensei Jiraiya. Furthermore, Paul does state that Naruto has surpassed his predecessors, although the rock statues that Naruto practices his lifting strength on are also called his predecessors by Paul, and the 4 Databook commentates on this scene, stating that it's Naruto having a Sage Mode that surpasses Jiraiya. Regardless, Naruto does go on to fight this Pain, who, albeit, is drained throughout the fight, although even with this looming fatigue, the Chapter 428 synopsis statement still calls him invincible, like how the 3rd Databook once did, even in comparison to the notoriously strong Akatsuki members. The 3rd also does remark about the reasoning for why such imposing fighters would ever follow Pain, being for his power that they can't deny, meaning Naruto is arguably fighting the strongest person in the known world, which fits with what we later come to see in the 4 Databook commentating on that, being that Naruto's combat ability reaches the very peak. He fights on equal footing with all 6 paths of Pain by himself. The Ashura path then flies at Tsunade with rocket boosters, and Naruto intercepts him, instantly slamming a Rasengan into this previous Kakashi rivaling path. The Rhino then charges at Naruto, and he literally just flings it into the sky. Ma and Pa are fighting at his side, instantly dismantling the other two animal summons, and Naruto summons clones to hand off Rasengans, to which he sends into both the ox and dog, with the rhino still in the air from the initial throw. Naruto isn't like the other shinobi in Konoha. He won't lose to one path or ability, and is now someone like Shikaku and Ko later posit is in his own tier of fighter. Using his new form, he then completely one-shots the Preta path, not with a punch, but with a force around his punch, leaving it basically incapacitated for a majority of the battle. And while the animal summons are all three in the air, Naruto's summoned toads begin slicing and whacking them, showing just how high-paced this fight is, and more importantly, how Naruto is running through the strongest man on the planet pretty quickly. Naruto instantly barks back at Pain's remarks about Jiraiya yearning for peace, and actually throws his Rasenshuriken, something he likely learned to do in the middle of the night, with this now being a mode beyond Naruto in speed, showing just how far he's truly come. The Rasenshuriken then expands, killing the human path. He continues pressing, and he corners the animal path, ultimately one-shotting it inside of Gamabunta's mouth to negate the shared vision, and the diva, using his sensory perception mode, notes that Naruto's senjutsu is beginning to wane, and fast. And then, one of the most forgotten details is revealed. Naruto has other clones at Mount Miyaboku, gathering senjutsu for him, and while this does seem minor, this is actually allowing for him to use several more times the amount of Rasenshuriken. Just for perspective, we know in the previous arc the Rasenshuriken was more taxing, or at least comparable to 200 Rasengans. Even if you don't assert that to be a stamina regard, it is still a power note, as this is literally innumerable more attacks than what he could possibly use in just those senjutsu clones. And Naruto continues on fighting and then just one-shotting the pass, although the diva does Bancho Tenin him into the Preta to then absorb his senjutsu chakra. Pain then kills Paul and slams Naruto into the ground, disrupting his chakra with the rods, and believing he's won the battle, he lectures Naruto on his ideas of true peace and ultimately leaves Hinata for dead, which ignites a spark in Naruto's eye. Naruto's rage turns him into the Four Tails once again, which in just the pure transformation, notice how it completely broke apart multiple black belted blades at the same time, all before transforming even further. This actually alludes to something really monstrous for Four Tails Naruto, and it's that the only characters in the manga to ever break the rods are Sage Naruto, Sage Jiraiya, and Pain. However, technically, Four Tails should be added to this list, and thus may be a fighter that's on par with Sage Jiraiya or Naruto in terms of pure output. However, as we are told, Kurama is taking Naruto's body as a vessel, and thus this Four Tails is probably beyond the previously shown Four Tails, with the anime now showing this one creating literal tornadoes and darkening the sky to a storm in a fashion ever only being shown by the strongest physical attack, the Amaterasu, obviously excluding the Rainmaker. Although, regardless, he transforms even further into the Six Tails, and as bones begin to form, Naruto then completely shatters the ceiling necklace and blitzes over to Tendo, forcing him to use Shenron Tensei. And while many people will posit that perhaps Sage Mode is, maybe above Six Tails simply due to the lack of statements for the contrary, this is firstly fallacious, and secondly, this feat is far beyond most of, if not everything, Sage Mode Naruto has done thus far, completely not just resisting Shenron Tensei, but slamming it back into Tendo. And then he instantly fires out a point-blank Bijou Bomb, which Pain tanks, although to Six Tails' credit, he also does so, and this forces Pain to realize his final solution, the Chubaku Tensei. And to further solidify this, the Six Tails can also run at virtually an equal speed to this concentrated Tendo, which should be the final nail in the coffin for Six Tails versus Sage Mode, and thus, in truth, the Six Tails is the strongest being on the planet right now, having used 2 Bijou Bombs before being sealed as well. Now, while this is really the conclusion for Sage Naruto at this point and Six Tails, let's go to the war arc following the 5 Kage Summit to discuss possible implications of the Six Tails and how Naruto relates to Kurama before wrapping it back around to the summit and what that really means. Chapter 497 opens with Naruto's declaration of battle against the demon within himself. Kurama fires a Bijou Bomb, and base Naruto can actually turn his body to some degree, which is actually really impressive for base Naruto and how much he's truly grown. Although this is pretty consistent with base Naruto also being able to temporarily parry off Pain's taijutsu while on the back foot, Naruto activates Sage Mode and a Big Ball Rasengan, which is stated to be Jiraiya's maximum output. although I doubt this for Naruto, wherein this doesn't leave much of a scratch on Kurama's tails, which simply fling him off, and as Naruto lands, Kurama goes on the offense, and Naruto states "so fast," which does help support the general notion that Kurama is a real speed monster and a KCM2 level threat. But let's not digress too much here, because Naruto then actually grabs Kurama and manages to throw him, and for Naruto and his lifting strength, this is pretty monstrous, although the Rasenshuriken then is thrown and hits Kurama, which actually does damage him and allow for Naruto to then take in some of that chakra, stating that Kurama is weakened and he is clearly singed from the Rasenshuriken, but Kurama, quote, takes the dark feelings swirling inside Naruto and gives them form, as stated in the Road to Ninja guidebook, and completely floods the mind of Naruto, where we see Naruto's head actually get pulled into Kurama. His real body then begins a Nine Tails cloak with both a half V1 and V2 form, which is just to say there's half of it's the Three Tails and half of it's the Four Tails, because that's when the difference happens. However, after Kushina appears and gives Naruto his resolve, he then has teams of 6 to 8 clones tug on Kurama's chakra while hitting him with over 24 Big Ball Rasengans and a follow-up Rasenshuriken, which actually succeeded, and Naruto gains his KCM1 cloak by pulling out the chakra. Now, some will take this to mean that 6 Tails is KCM1 level initially, seen as it shows 6 tails of Kurama that he takes in. The 6 tails of QB is therefore KCM1 level, right? Well, not really. That's a progress shot where we see more chakra being drawn from Kurama in that panel, and quite literally 2 panels later, Kurama then has 9, so no, 6 Tails isn't KCM1 level, at least off this. However, let's digress back a little notch, back to the end of the pain arc. Naruto wants to train his Sage Mode more, however, he gets interrupted the only time he tries by Sakura. However, before marching off to see his dear friend, Obito actually appears to Naruto, and many people have asked here, why didn't Obito just snatch up Naruto? Well, it's actually quite intricate, and here's an interesting way you might be able to perceive Naruto's power. So, naturally, within the confines of his character, Obito, following the Minato fight, after realizing presumably the precarious footing of Project Tsukiyomi, doesn't engage anyone that could pose a real threat, but will rival them in some sense. Obito has a rivalry with Itachi, and knowing that he's a nuisance, never challenges him, and even does the same with Pain, even when he openly defies Obito with the Rainmaker plot. And since all Obito knows is that Pain had been defeated by Naruto, something relatively inconceivable by Obito's intel gatherer Zetsu, Naruto may be one of those risky fighters that he's probably not wrong in not wanting to fight Naruto. He can fight the Nine Tails on low ends, has a technique that can one-shot 2 of Kakuzu's hearts at the same time, and is now narratively meant to be a fighter, standing above each of the 5 Kage, and the strongest remaining Akatsuki member, plus the strongest remaining Jinchuriki. As the arc opens in chapter 456, the synopsis statement hails the 5 Kage as the strongest shinobi in the world, which is something that's been previously described in Gaara, Hiden, Ross's 2nd databook file, Oniki's 4th databook file, Fanbook 1, and basically every single medium you're ever going to look at, as Sasuke begins to rage to the summit, defeating each of the Kage or fighting highly relative to them before getting unrecognizably stronger. We cut away to Killer B, the 8 Tails Jinchuriki versus Kisame, the strongest remaining Akatsuki member, and we see that B wins. However, is still a narrative inferior to the 4th Raikage that Sasuke beat up, with the 4 databook hailing A as the strongest Kumogakure shinobi, and the Kizuna guides also implying similar sentiments. However, at the very end of the summit, we see that Sasuke's power continues to grow, and Naruto senses this power, tracking him down and saving Sakura from Sasuke, where the two clash and come to the ultimate realization that the Kizuna Earth Scroll were its best. Quote, after once crossing fists with Sasuke, who plots the destruction of the leaf, Naruto and he come to a deep understanding of each other's hearts. Naruto realizes that words alone can no longer stop Sasuke, and that the two of them ever clash with all of their strength, they will both likely die. Even knowing this fate, Naruto resolves to confront Sasuke. You see, this will be a direct theme for the rest of the series going forward, and it's that the Senjutsu and Dojutsu amps will always be of the same caliber through different methods. And what do I mean? Well, essentially, we know that as Viz, Volume 45 hails the two gain ever-increasing powers, except for Naruto, we know that his power comes all at once, with the Sage Mode instantly buffing him. The Road to Ninja guidebook states it as follows: power gained from his training at Mount Miyaboku. By making nature his ally, his sensing ability and bodily toughness increase dramatically. And this Naruto then has to acclimate to that power. He had to learn how to use the Senjutsu to his advantage as opposed to just acting as though he typically does, which did still allow for him to fall onto stalagmites and take no damage, thus showing the full amp in its beginning. Whereas, in contrast, Sasuke is close to no amp initially, although as his hatred develops, the deeper the darkness gets and the greater his ocular powers become. These form in massive chakra amps, just as Sage Mode does, which is stated by Paul to just be adding Senjutsu into your chakra, making it more potent, thus dramatically increasing your ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. Sasuke is similar. Each time his hatred increases, his Susanoo develops and he gets unrecognizably more powerful beyond even his earlier forms and could fight on par with the 4th Raikage A in that time, where now both he and Naruto, and peering into each other's minds as equals, ultimately realize that if they fight, they will both die. Where now the two, standing above all 5 Kage, the strongest remaining Akatsuki member, the strongest Biju, Naruto beat the strongest Akatsuki member, ultimately realize that if they fight, they will both die. Sasuke desires the EMS, and Naruto desires another power, a deeper power, the Nine Tails Chakra. Now, just as the entire world begins to ramp up and engage in what's called the greatest conflict in shinobi history, Naruto too takes on the fullness of his father's wish, being the savior of the world. Now, Naruto has obtained a new power through using his Sage Mode to fight Kurama, now having KCM1, and KCM1 is actually quite unique and complicated to discuss, as in its relation to Sage Mode and whatever, it's a pretty highly debated topic for which one might be superior. So as we go into the encounters throughout the war, I also want to splice in why I think KCM1 is the better form, and how I qualify that to be so. As Naruto first opens with KCM, we get the most blatant variable that it has over Sage Mode, being raw speed. Naruto literally blasts into the wall, and while some will try to qualify this simply as travel speed through the notion of it being body flicker, this is kind of irrelevant, and regardless, we know that this is being taken as a general speed notion and should be consistent, as Naruto later does state that he is stronger than when he fought Pain. And for Naruto, as we saw during Lee versus Gaara's fight, increasing your speed makes you a stronger fighter, because he, along with many in the verse, simply use stronger as a blanket term for overall combative ability. This is of course after Naruto had already taken on Minato's rival, beating him and being called the strongest ally on the battlefield aside from possibly Killer B, being whenever he fights Nagato and Itachi. But let's zoom the lens in on Naruto versus A, because I think this fight in particular says a lot about what KCM1 is to represent, especially speed-wise. So, thus, while Naruto has at least travel speed beyond Sage Mode and is generally considered a better form than Sage Mode, with the Road to Ninja guide calling it outright the most fearsome power in context to when Naruto is using Sage Mode to try and take this power, I think this fight should probably help solidify the notions I'm trying to get at. Now, quickly, I also don't want to eliminate raw strength, as we know that the Nine Tails Chakra does just increase strength, obviously, as the second anime profile guide says as much, but I'm honestly fine with accepting Sage Naruto's lifting strength to be superior, because that's not really what matters here. We're made aware that A is stated in Databook 4 to boast a godlike speed not inferior to the Yellow Flash, which is a colloquial term and nickname of Minato from his days on the Third War battlefield, where he brings countless platoons to victory, and later, once Hokage, comes to be known as the greatest in godlike speed. You see, as stated elsewhere in Databook 4, A trains quite consistently in his free time, with chapter 416 showing him lifting weights, and A is now confident in the fact that there is no shinobi faster than him since the 4th Hokage died. A is now the fastest shinobi since Hokage Minato isn't there, but is of a speed equal to, or now at least above, Jonin Minato, hero of the war, a savior. Naruto hails this as one of his two sons guiding the path forward, and A even remarks that, don't you think Minato dying makes this savior notion of failure? And Naruto rebuttals with no, they died protecting me, I will be the savior. Have you noticed the theme? In part 1, Naruto gained a jutsu the 4th Hokage wielded. Then, Naruto gained a jutsu the 4th Hokage couldn't create. Then, Sage Mode, like his father, now he's gotten speed heading into a war that his father once had, heading into a war, fighting in the third war. Hence why A's notion about the Yellow Flash fits perfectly with both B and Tsunade's separate remarks about Naruto being just like the Yellow Flash. So, in this form, it's seemingly in most of the ways superior to that of Sage Mode, except for one key element, which I'll touch on when the time comes. For here, let's note some of the form's new abilities that are really helpful for Naruto. The first and foremost of which is Naruto's ability to create chakra arms, and these chakra arms are actually much faster than himself. For example, we know the 3-Tomoe Sharingan wielder doesn't get innately faster just by opening the MS, but instead, they get techniques like the Susanoo, for example, which is much faster. Against A, Sasuke was highly relative to him and then blitzed him with the Susanoo arms. Despite this, we see that KCM1 Naruto is actually relative to a 3-Tomoe Itachi and Taijutsu, with his chakra arms being equal to that of the Susanoo, and are also being shown to be like Naruto's body flicker speed, where it's so strong he could barely even control the might. These arms also allow for him to have a better form and throw the Rasenshuriken, with Naruto also being capable of creating miniature arms that could make miniature bullet-like Rasenshuriken, as shown against Zetsu. Another such ability would be Naruto's newfound sensory, although this sensory isn't like the aforementioned Sage Mode sensory, but is instead more predicated upon danger or the sensing intent. This is why Naruto can tell Zetsu apart from humans and even fight with his vision impaired, just like he could in Sage Mode, despite the two being fundamentally different in how they work. Naruto does, however, concede that Sage Mode does possess a wider danger sense than KCM1 and hence has a better reactionary window, which is why he uses it against the 3rd Raikage when needing a larger reactionary window for his defensive counterstrike. Elsewhere, I also do want to make a distinction I don't hear tossed around enough. Naruto fundamentally fights in a stylistically different manner than Sage Mode. In Sage Mode, Naruto fights primarily using Taijutsu and using Rasengans to slam the opponent, and other variants like Big Ball Rasengans and whatnot. In KCM1, Naruto doesn't really fight like that, and his taijutsu bouts are less than what you could probably count on a single hand. It's mostly using his newer found chakra abilities like those arms and Rasenshuriken, stuff like that. He, for example, in that battle against the 3rd Raikage, comes onto the battlefield using the chakra arm to actually throw the Rasenshuriken from behind the 3rd's back, which he dodges, where Naruto then does it again, and also uses a very small amount of the cloak to possibly amplify that throw just by a little bit. Naruto is also capable of utilizing more Rasenshuriken and Rasengan than a single Sage Mode charge, and he also does have more Rasengan techniques, like the Planetary Rasengan. This is a normal Rasengan with multiple surrounding Rasengans to then twist the opponent into oblivion. The 4th databook also does state that the miniature Rasengans, quote, increase its overall destructive power, which does speak to quite a bit, as it's also noted in this databook to be of the highest destructive power for a no signs technique. We cut away to the ocean front, and Shikamaru is now regarding Naruto as a head figure in the alliance. We then see him continually fighting upon different battlefields, helping out his fellow shinobi. Something Itachi helped Naruto realize being that while Naruto is a savior, as his father once was, he isn't alone. He can't be alone. What made the 4th Hokage great wasn't him, it was the people around him. And this clicks for Naruto. If he burdens it all on his lonesome, he won't be like his father. He'll be like Madara instead. In these other skirmishes, we see Naruto's clones are using multiple Rasengan, where in one battle he can catch sharp blades using 3 chakra arms and then using these chakra arms to punch the opponent from his stomach, showing a new level of diversity in the young shinobi's toolkit. Some of the clones are also using Rasenshuriken, others are using just basic Rasengans. The point being is that Naruto's stamina and the genuine relevance of this form is much better than Sage Mode. If you were to have a fight, between the two, for example, you would have a Sage Mode Naruto fight not just, one of these clones. You'd have him fight all 14 of these clones at the same time, each capable of using multiple Rasengan and Rasenshuriken, with each having techniques far faster than themselves and more unpredictable than anything Sage Mode had. with the anime actually taking that further, showing well over 100 clones dispersed to the battlefield. Regardless, Databook 4 though does note that, quote, morale in the allied forces soars at Naruto's incredible performance, and the alliance gains an overwhelming advantage, also alluding to how much Naruto has helped the battle. Naruto then runs into Obito, and the two actually come to a glaring headbutt clash, which weirdly enough is kind of a display of power, seen as when Naruto and Heavy Sasuke met in the forest, Sasuke overtook Naruto, showing the difference between the two, and while Naruto didn't even crack the mask, it at least shows that he's not an entire tier out of Obito's league. The rest of this part of the fight is pretty irrelevant, besides for this end panel, which does allude to the fact that Naruto's cloak does provide some sort of defensive advantage, seeing as he's not really messed up, and yet B is, and they tank the same explosion. As the fight does progress, however, we can see that Naruto actually holds the jaws of the Four-Tailed Son Goku, who is the king of the Sage Monkeys, likely a natural superior to Enma, the king of normal monkeys, and even then holds Son Goku's hand open. And lastly, Naruto finally realizes who he's up against and places his hand on his stomach. Naruto has now made friends with the hatred that's cursed him all of his life. KCM2 spends no time letting us know the sheer difference in power between this and KCM1. The seal is now fully unlocked, and both he and Kurama are now the strongest two-man cell in the world, according to Databook 4. He uses a chakra strip to then literally slap away 5 Biju bombs at the same time, each of which were techniques that are actually close to a blitz level above those states, as we'll see later, with them being comparable to even Sasuke's Susanoo arrow, proportionally speaking. This means that for those who try to argue that there isn't a massive difference between KCM 1 and 2, you're going to have to reckon Naruto slapping away 6 blitz level techniques beyond the Biju, who are already comparable to, if not above, his KCM 1 state. This avatar is also admittedly necessarily an entire tier above, and to argue otherwise is either ignorant or uninformed. The avatar roars away all the Biju and literally latches onto the 7, slamming it into the ground and holding it down while shoving his hand down the 6-tail's throat before grabbing him and throwing him into the 2-tails, where all 5 then charge 1 Biju bomb, and the avatar matches it with what Databook 4 calls the greatest destructive power. Naruto is now a literal monster. Even in the midst of this explosion, which even full Gyuki can barely withstand, Naruto sends out 5 arms, each equipped with a Sage Naruto clone inside to tear the rods out. I mean, bro, what world are we in? Like, Naruto is literally tearing apart the domain of power as we knew it. As Naruto talks to the Biju, the once lump of hatred and misery that ruined everything Naruto could have had, the life he could have had, Kurama looks upon Naruto smiling faintly, saying, "It's taken way too long, old man," reminiscing with the other Biju about the Sage of 6 Paths and who Naruto has now become. Naruto then doesn't really use KCM2 for a few dozen chapters, although we can be pretty confident in asserting that the previous KCM1 state is now going to be amplified beyond what it was due to the link being much better. And while this isn't really shown very prominently in chapter 595, where he begins the confrontation with Obito once again, however, in chapter 628, this newer KCM1, now called KCM 1.5 or MKCM, depending on who you ask, can actually react to both Madara's Majestic Destroyer Flame and Obito's Bomb Blast Dance at the same exact time, while also giving chakra to the Alliance. He also reacts to both of their MS projectiles and even Obito's surprise Kamui Taijutsu Strike, which lends me, along with most creators, in the direction that KCM 1.5 isn't just KCM 1, and one thing I don't hear enough is that these feats are far from what KCM 1 was doing against Obito in chapter 595, and it seems that KCM 1.5 is actually much more paramount after he shifts into KCM 2 the second time, which is still above KCM 1.5, that can not only perform the 628 feats, but also react equally with a more acclimated EMS Sasuke. This KCM 2 is now confirmed to be no longer the Nine-Tails chakra just under control, but rather mastered. It's exactly what Minato intended for Naruto to have to fight Obito. It's exactly what Naruto needs to be close to his father in speed, at least within the avatar, that is. Like in his KCM1 state, Naruto's fighting style changes again, but is now simply more of those chakra arms, which are so fast that even White Mask Obito can't fully evade them, having it to use his Kamui to, pass through them, showing how even if you want to argue that KCM1 or 1.5 is close to KCM2's no avatar or no arm state, that's fine, but that just means literally nothing because he doesn't fight like that at all. Besides whenever he gets up, close with Obito for a Rasengan hit and stuff like that. Other than that, the Avatar arms were used as offensive against Obito twice, outspeeding his combat speed twice, and Naruto uses the Avatar head to catch Obito's Kamui-propelled shuriken and even create a literal Biju bomb to also outspeed Obito. Even when Obito uses bomb blast hits, Naruto uses the tails to singularly fan it away. Like, sure, they can be close to a base KCM2 state, but that literally means diddly squat because of how the Avatar is now being used, showing also the prowess of Naruto's battle IQ. Now, then just using his tails once again, he throws the Biju rods back at Madara, where Naruto then presses him and can actually use a Biju bomb with the clone utilizing a single hand, which also speaks to his versatility now as well. After losing to the legendary Wood Style, Naruto, still realizing that he'll never let his comrades die, blitzes back over to the fight and catches Madara's Susanoo blade again with the chakra arms, which should just be faster than Madara's own bodily speed, showing just how crazy Naruto's speed actually is. Before Databook even going so far as to call Madara and Obito characters whose individual overwhelming power stands out above the rest, but the power of bonds give Naruto immense strength. Naruto, still using those very same arms, blitzes through Obito once again, and the other Naruto then uses the fullness of the Avatar to send out a bomb that literally shakes the very ground beneath them, and he can actually use multiple of these like a machine gun to fire out at the almighty Ten Tails, the Ten Tails of course being a being like Hashirama or Hagoromo, whose power is also conflated with legend or mixed in as fairy tale, the progenitor of chakra, the creator of everything, whatever. Although, this shouldn't be too surprising, as Naruto in mastering the Nine Tails should be on a level where he should be beyond what base half Kurama could do, which Databook 3 says is, capable of turning the world to ash and whatnot. KCM2 then dissipates for a large portion of the war, coming back to fight alongside his reanimated father, who is burdened by failures and the weight of regret. Naruto is capable of sharing his chakra with the entire alliance, and Minato finally concludes that Naruto isn't that baby any longer. He's everything he'd hoped to be. He's the savior of the world, and as Minato snaps out of his stupor, both he and his son, who adds Sage Mode to his KCM2 cloak, clash against Jubito, pressing him farther than anyone else thus could. The same Jubito that Madara thinks could make all the Hokage beg for mercy, and the same Jubito that's very much confident in obliterating the entire world, something promotional material for the Storm games also corroborate. Now, while I don't think KCM2 is comparatively much of an amp for Minato, this is still one of the final narrative pushes for Naruto's power, being that he is now as fast as his father, showing promise similar to Hashirama and what he once did with Sasuke, who can now match Naruto, having a similar promise for reaching Madara's level. Orochimaru even goes as far as saying that with all of the knowledge he's gathered throughout his entire life, Sasuke is a shinobi who will surpass Madara. The two then fight alongside each other like brothers and press Jubito hard onto the back foot before ultimately combining their power into the majestic attire and ultimately defeating Jubito. And as Obito fell like Icarus, he thought that perhaps he conceded in his heart that Naruto was right. Obito has now reflected on Rin, the light and hope of his life, and asked Kakashi, "So what's the difference between me and Naruto? Why do you stick up for him?" To which Kakashi interjects with, "Because he won't fail as much as you." "How?" Obito asks, to which Kakashi simply answers, "Because I'll help him," and continues on, stating that Naruto will never give up on his dreams. And as Kakashi lectures about the importance of comrades, Naruto uses his Rasenshuriken on top of the god tree, and the moon goes away under the clouds. Naruto is the light of the world, the savior of the world. And as Madara resurrects and begins to regain his past strength, Naruto and Sasuke attempt to fight him, but the efforts are futile. Madara, before killing Sasuke, takes Kurama out of Naruto, and as he lays on the ground, we see our hero virtually dead. But into the mind of Naruto comes perhaps what you might call a forefather, Hagoromo, who tells Naruto something we've gotten hints at all along. Naruto is the reincarnation of Ashura. And quote, it appears that the day the child of prophecy shall change the entire world has arrived. And with conviction trusted in him by his forefathers, the light of the world, the one who prophecy foretold, the one who in birth was destined to save mankind through a heavy cross, the last Ashura, the one who gives life to the gate of death, he who takes on the world's hatred, the Messiah, Naruto Uzumaki, is here. Also, yes, side note, there's also a lot more Christian symbolism than what people give this series due. And also, wait, you made it this far, and 80% of everyone who watches my videos aren't subscribed, so come on now, subscribe. Or don't, just hype it up, leave it a like, you do you, just don't report it, I guess. 6 Pass Sage Mode is definitely the greatest form and in terms of amp that Naruto really gets throughout Shippuden. And while that's relatively obvious from the jump, kicking away a TSO, which previously required Minato's ability to transcend concepts like space and distance, one thing that's not so recognized is Naruto's clear connection with the other Bijuu, which he shares a connection with in a pseudo-Ten-Tails sense, in terms of Jinchuriki, right? With Naruto instantly being able to utilize a lava Rasenshuriken and a magnet-style Rasengan. Databook 4 describes this variant as one with greatly enhanced suction power, although it seems to be implying that with this it becomes more fearsome even in comparison to a typical Rasengan, which shouldn't sound surprising, seeing as Sasuke states, I have 6 paths too, adding it to his Chidori, where this is seemingly a matching technique to such whenever they hit Madara, implying that, you know, this is now a 6 pass level ability, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and speculate how the suction actually works too much, but if it's not just increasing the rotation via some magnetic means, then perhaps the magnetic pattern transferring over to Madara hence means that it's making Madara a magnetic attractor to then pull him into the Rasengan even more, might be a sufficient answer. Weirdly enough, this technique also may have a permanent or longer lasting effect upon the victim, as Madara's limbo clones get pinned down with TSO rods, except the magnetic pattern is actually still on his body. These limbo clones are described in Databook 4 to be imperceptible phantoms that exist in a reality adjacent to our own, with each alone being nearly equal to the user, and despite this, Naruto's 4 clones are still holding off Madara's limbo, really using just taijutsu and base Rasengans. The real Naruto, however, is using Super Bijuu Rasenshuriken to instantly nuke Chibaku Tensei meteors that are much bigger than even Pain's. Naruto then doesn't stop there, and out of nowhere, he creates 6 more of these monstrous nukes and tosses them out simultaneously while also not trying to hit Sasuke without the need of any real chakra arm or anything of the sort. Madara then, after casting the Infinite Tsukiyomi, uses a monstrously large Deep Forest Emergence to spread the God Tree across the entire planet, which is calced in 2 out of the 3 given time frames to require planetary levels of energy to do so. Although, for Naruto in this form, he's already said to have manipulation of the guiding principles of the universe and the ability to create the form out of naught, like, you know, in the case of Kakashi's eyeball. Naruto has a literally monstrous potent sensory ability, which is only natural as this is a successor senjutsu form to Sage Mode, but as Sasuke is seeing the Limbo clones, Naruto is simply fighting several of them at the same time while sensing them, not looking at them. Now, of course, this isn't to say he can't see them at all, as we do get an image of what his original Sage Sensory did look like, where, you know, he could sense images or pseudo-images of the entire war battlefield fronts and stuff like that, so now it's extended to, you know, realities beyond our very universe, if you could believe it. With that, Naruto is now pressing 4 Madaras that are far stronger than when he was said to be approaching Hagoromo's power. And you see, while many people are very hasty to assume Naruto and Sasuke are inferior to Hagoromo because he gave them each half of his power, this is wrong. For the latter, we never get any idea of how much chakra he actually gave either Naruto or Sasuke. And for the former, it's simply that he gave them each 6 pass chakra, not forms to have or new abilities or anything like that. Naruto used 6 pass chakra to amplify his Sage Mode, which he then further amps with KCM2. Sasuke could have gotten the Rinnegan from Hagoromo, but likely awakened it by being a full Uchiha, getting all of Hashirama's chakra, then nearly dying, which are the exact same stipulations that caused it to take form in Madara's eye. Now, of course, Naruto does have access to truth-seeking auras, which allow for him to stab through Madara and leave visible singeing, bruising marks on the Limbo clones. And as Naruto and Co. leave to the dream-cursed world, Madara states, "I've just severed the karmic cycle of this world. I freed humankind from their suffering, their pain, their futility." And Naruto curses back at Madara, assuring him that he's not the true Messiah, to which Zetsu states verbatim, killing Madara. Madara was never meant to be the savior. He was only meant to die at the hands of the only person he's ever trusted, which he did in this life and the last. Chakra that's described as incredible then begins to erupt out of the ground, all flowing into Madara. His body begins to morph itself. He literally can't take it, and poof! There's Kaguya, the monster who was more powerful than any other. Sasuke senses that this chakra is far greater than even Madara's, and he can't even conceive of a being like this ever actually existing though. However, she does not want to destroy her precious planet, so she swaps everyone out into another dimension. However, this is probably more ridiculous than you think. Databook 4 makes a keen remark that its chakra requirement is why Kaguya is the only person who could ever use this specific jutsu, meaning Three-Eyed Madara, Naruto, or Sasuke couldn't even use it a single time. But why is that? Well, Kakashi firstly notes that she isn't exactly plopping everyone through a portal or anything like that, but that, quote, she's summoned an alternate dimension, which Databook 4 actually supports in calling it an ability to freely weave space itself, and that, quote, in an instant she can transfer the world she herself occupies along with everyone around her into another dimension. This literally implies that Kaguya is swapping out the dimensional time spaces, not just the people, which is why everyone on the planet who isn't under the Genjutsu, regardless of will, like Obito, is swapped into the lava world, but in their same positions. Naruto then clashes his chakra arms relatively with this very Kaguya, who Kakashi states after thinking of her Ameno Manaka, which is, the transfer ability or whatever, that, quote, this is a totally different scale. She's like a god, meaning that Kaguya is basically confirmed not just in chakra, but in true ability to be above any conceivable thing that Madara was going to do or could do. She then shifts dimensions again. Sasuke gets tossed into another dimension, and Naruto with his bare hands can then, with pure force, can hold the entry space open. And this isn't really anything to pass over either. Holding open a dimension entry seam would require countering whatever trans-spatial tension is keeping it closed or trying to close it, and within a given shape in the first place. For an example, right, that's conceptually pretty impressive, much more impressive than like resisting gravity itself with just pure force or muscles. So this is actually quite monstrous, but again consistent when you account for Naruto's universal principal powers. He then dodges one of Kaguya's off-guard attempts, and Kaguya herself actually calls him fast. Then, the catch being that this is only a clone of Naruto. Naruto states that he can't sense Sasuke, which does confirm that Kaguya's dimensions are obviously their own universes of sorts, with this necessarily having to be beyond an adjacent universal reality like with the Limbo, which Naruto could sense. However, Naruto's real body does imply that he can sense Sasuke, implying that the real body can sense beyond those universal spaces and what have you. Kokuo then boosts Naruto's chakra to the boiling point, and Naruto blasts out of the ice and matches Kaguya's power, shooting her back. He then summons countless clones in the Naruto Uzumaki Barrage, which is stated to have power beyond even Lee in the Gates, according to Databook 4. Duh. He's dodging her vacuum fist, arms, and even flying through them, if you could believe it. Naruto's clones then pursue Kaguya into another dimension, and Zetsu actually begins to console her on what she needs to do, and that she needs to stop engaging Naruto. It's too much of a risk, because he's probably going to end up draining her or beating her due to what she's doing, and she then just shoots an ash bone at this Naruto, instantly killing it. As the fight wages on, Obito compliments just how incredibly vast her time spaces are, with Naruto and Ko being swapped to one where she has enhanced the gravity. And while some have posited otherwise, I don't think this is really that crazy. She's affected by the gravity too, so it's probably just a greater mass, not that she's actually manipulating how gravity works in the universe or something like that, obviously. Obito then gives his life for his comrades, walking ahead of them, walking in the most rugged path, as Minato's student, Kakashi's friend, Naruto's predecessor, as Obito Uchiha, as the Hokage. And as Zetsu mocks Obito's death as deservingly pathetic, Naruto, with sheer anger, flies over and rips Kaguya's arm off. And the rest of this fight is simply sealing her and isn't too much for Naruto's power, although she does admit that she can destroy her root time space, which all the others are connected to, and Naruto could rival her power, which has prompted many people to argue for Naruto being universal, which probably isn't inconsistent with some other pieces of evidence, although that's another topic for another day. Now, I also don't want to spend too much time treading into the final valley encounter, as many people like my friend TG have done 30-minute analysis of it, going over the anime and whatnot, and I would simply be copy pasting the points here. Now, one thing I do want to commentate on, however, is the statement that Sasuke makes and what it actually implies for both he and Naruto. He states that he has many options, of the which is reincarnation, just like Indra, and this is actually a theme that's pretty correlated to power. For example, Kaguya thought that Hagoromo and Hamura could have been predecessors to Naruto and Sasuke, but instead it was Indra and Ashura, who are nearly twice Hagoromo's power, if not more, as I went over in my Uchiha ranking video. But this is certainly a possible power dynamic if you just want to ground them kind of being peak of the verse already. However, in the end, Naruto wins and Sasuke admits defeat. The cycle of hatred is over. The boy who dreamed of everything that was once deemed impossible, has done it. He was everything he was ever destined to be. He was the Messiah, the savior of the world. He was Naruto Uzumaki, the 7th Hokage.